Hello once again, this is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of my never-ending quest to make people understand the AWD 1000 web development technologies and AWD 1111 database-driven website development classes, I've been going through some of the ebooks by Mr. Flavio Copes, and so far I've done his ebook for HTML, and I am partway through his ebook for I've done the HTML, and now I'm in the CSS ebook. So as you can see, we're 21 pages in, so not too far. All right. It says specificity does not matter if a rule ends with importance. So let's grab this. All right. Now you already know that we've got dog name 1 after dog name 2. There and here. You already know, since dog name 2, all right, that the color that we have on here is pink. All right. And we have that because this is listed it's listed last. But what if I came in here and I said, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to add an important rule right there. Now let's see what color it is. And notice it's brown. It's not pink. Be very leery of using this important rule. As it says there, adding the exclamation point important in the CSS rule is going to make that rule more important than any other rule. The problem is people get infatuated with using the importance rule, and they use it all over the place. Okay, so it says the only way another rule can take precedence is to have as important as well, and then have a higher specificity. So really, in general, you should use the amount of specificity you need and not more. In other words, don't use that important unless it's really necessary, and really gauge whether or not it's even necessary to begin with. All right. Now it says there's a site here that I've never seen, this specificity site here. So let's take a quick look at it. So it shows you basically, says change the selectors or paste in your own. So I guess it was developed by Mr. Keegan Street. All right. As it says, it's not a CSS validator. It'll just talk to you about importance. If you have an interest, go check that out. Inheritance. When you set some properties on a selector, they're inherited by all children. The author says, I said some because not all properties show this behavior. This happens because some properties make sense to be inherited. All right. It says this helps us write CSS more concisely. It says think about fonts. You don't need to apply the font family to every single tag on your page. You can set it in the body, for example. So if I come up there, and remember, this is all we've got right now in our CSS. So if I say, hey, at the top of the page, in the body, I want the font, and I'm just giving you this one because I know it sticks out, but I'm going to say monospace. I think that's a valid font. If it's not, we're going to know real quick. It did not change. So let's try something else. Well, we already know about impact. Oh, that's the problem. We don't say font, of course. We say font family. All right. Now, if we come in here, let's use Cambria. I don't know what that is. All right. So we'll use that. That should have changed. That should have changed the entire thing here. So this is now a different font. It may not look that different. So let's grab something else. Let's grab impact. Now that really sticks out. So if I go back again, and I'm just going to make it Arial, because that's a fairly common font. It's one I like. There you go. All right. And we lost all the other stuff because we didn't have our ending curly brace there. So now it's all back, okay, with an Arial font. All right. These are some of the properties that will inherit automatically for you. Notice it's a fairly big list, and there's more on the next page. It says, I got it from a nice SitePoint article. CSS inheritance and introduction. All right, there are just so many really fantastic sites out there where you can learn more about this stuff. Again, as always, I'd recommend 3. The first would be W3 Schools, and I would go through their CSS tutorials so at w3schools.com. Next, I would recommend the Mozilla Developer Network because they've got a big series on CSS. And finally, I'd recommend CSS-tricks.com because they've got a lot of stuff as well. You can force properties to inherit. All right. And you can force properties not to inherit. All right. From any CSS file, you can import another CSS file using the import directive. One important thing that you need to know is import directives must be put before any other CSS. So why would this be important? Well, it might be that you want to put in some of your own CSS, but the company you work for already has a bunch of CSS set up. This is how you would bring that in. All right. It says we've already introduced several of the CSS basic selectors. We've talked about element selectors, we've talked about classes, we've talked about IDs, and a few other things. All right. It says in the next section, we'll analyze attribute exceptions. The first type to talk about is the attribute presence selector. So as it says, you can check to see if an element has an attribute by doing this. All right, as it says, this will select all paragraph tags that have an ID attribute regardless of its value. Again, this is one of those things that even though it's available, be cautious with it. I don't use these. All right. Now this one's okay because that's only going to fit paragraphs that have that ID. Okay. And notice that when you match this, the stuff that's in here. Equal looks for an exact value. There is asterisk equal, caret equal, etc. So there's quite a few of them. And they also mention the can I use site, which again, I have gone and looked at this site, talked about this site many times. So for instance, if I wanted to know if some particular CSS property will work here, I could put it in there. All right. We don't need that one anymore. I don't think we need that. So, all right, I want to pick it up a little bit here. Pseudo classes start with a colon. There's a big list here. Let's just talk about a few of them. Active, as it says, an element that is being activated by a user. Checked. Checked is used for both checkboxes and radio buttons. All right, where you can literally check if something is checked. You can check to see if something is disabled. You can check for the first child. So for instance, if I wanted to just do some targeting maybe on the first list item, I could use first child or the last one to see if a particular thing has a focus. If I don't want the first child or the last child, I can do nth child. So I can match at a certain position. This starts from the beginning, nth last child starts from the end. Valid, as it says, is used with forms. Okay. So here's A. So here's an anchor tag. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the text and it's going to make it yellow. So let's grab this one and we'll go all the way down here in just a minute. So let's go in here. We'll keep our body thing. Let's get rid of this dog stuff. We'll just replace it with this. All right. And this says all of our anchor tags, as you can see, should have yellow. So let's see. Want to know more about Rankin. This is going to go to where I work. Whoops. At Rankin Technical College. But that's not what's important. I want you to look at the coloring. See that? Yellow is really a hideous color on there. But clicking right there is going to open up the Rankin Technical College website. All right. So why did I show you that? Because what they mention in here is there's other pseudo selectors you have in here. All right. A is just literally that. Visited by default, you know already a regular anchor tag is blue. Once you click on it, the visited becomes purple. Active, which I think that means that when you're pressing down on it. All right. Let's see. And there actually is an order that you have for these. Let's find out what that is. All right, the order is visited, focused, focus, hover, and active. So let's give each one of these a different color. So by default, the regular anchor tag is going to look like this. Don't worry, this will look funky for a minute. So we'll put A:visited. And let's make that color green. A focus. And let's give that a color of pink. A hover. And let's give that, whoops, a color of blue. I don't like the blue. How about red? And finally, I guess I already had done hover. A active. And let's give that a color of maroon. Maroon. Okay? And now let's look at this. Now you've already seen this, that by default, okay, notice that's green because we've already clicked on it. Now what if I refresh? I don't think that's going to change it. So that's the visited color. Notice when I put my mouse over it, it turns red. So we've already seen all right, it's going to keep that as green, and green, as you've already seen, green was visited. If I hover over it, it should be red. And it is. It was yellow to begin with, which was this. Focus, not even sure what focus is. I know what active is, but so let's look at that one. So when I click down on it, but I haven't let go yet. Well, and pink, so I did click on it and I let go. And that's when it turned pink, when I moved off of it. Okay. All right, so jumping back then. And I'm getting close here on my time. So again, these are some more of the pseudo elements. Pseudo means false. Notice with these pseudo elements, they start with a double colon, whereas the ones that we used for our anchor tags had just a single colon. All right. Let's try this one. So I'm going to grab this paragraph first letter and I don't need any of these anchor tags in here anymore, so I'm going to comment these out. But what I want is my paragraphs. I want the first letter. No, I don't want the font weight bolder. Yeah, we can do that. We could have put bold, bolder. That's no big thing. But I'm also going to put in here font size 3 rem. And let's see what that did. See that? That's another way that we could have done that. Then that's about the only time that I ever used the inline CSS is I could have come in here and manually put that in as well. Okay, all right. Colors we've started talking about. They're a big topic. Let's see if I can do those in about 5 minutes. All the colors I've been using thus far have been named colors. CSS started with 16. Notice how much bigger it is today. I'm not going to go through those. That's if you use the actual real themselves colors. All right. What if you don't want to do that? Because even with all those shown there, there might be a few hundred of them. I don't know, maybe 100 to 300, somewhere in there. But I can also do it using the amount of red I want to use, the amount of green I want to use, and the amount of blue I want to use, which is RGB. All right. And the number that you put in for red must be between 0 and 255. The amount of the number you put in for green must be between 0 and 255. And the amount you put in for blue must be between 0 and 255. 0 means total absence. 255 means total presence or total saturation. So this is white, where this would be black. So because that's a total presence, total red, total green, total blue, which gives us white, total absence of red, total absence of green, total absence of blue, which gives us black. When we do this, we can also put, instead of RGB, we can use RGBA. All right, there really should be an A right there. And that's the amount of opacity you want to put in there. And that's a number between 0 and 1. All right. And I always forget the order. I think 0 means that it's totally opaque, and 1 means that it's totally transparent, or vice versa. Let's come in here and do this. Just use the example they have. All right, so this says the background color of our paragraphs should be this gray color right here. And let's see if indeed that's the case. And you can see that it is. Now, the higher I make this number, so let's try making it 0.9. And notice how dark it gets. You probably won't even be able to read the text on there. See that? Because that's almost I guess 1 is opaque and 0 is transparent. So if I make this just, let's try making it 0.25. That's almost totally see-through. But again, there's a little bit. So let's change that to 0 and see what it looks like. And you'll notice the background then becomes totally white. So if you want to put a little bit of something in there for effect, I'll put in 0.1. And you'll notice there's a light gray that's in there. All right. You can also use a hexadecimal number. When you use a hexadecimal number, it starts with a pound sign. And again, 2 numbers for red, 2 numbers for green, 2 numbers for blue. But the numbers that you put in must be between 0, 0, which is total absence, and FF. FF is a hexadecimal or base 16 number, and FF is 255 in base 16. So it works the same way. And not only when you use hex, all right, there's some shortcuts and stuff you can use. For now, let's just leave it at that. There's also HSL and HSLA. H is hue, S is saturation, L is light. And some people have kind of fallen in love with this and use it all the time. You can use percentages, etc. Some people love it, some people hate it. All right, I tend not to use it very much. I use either the, I would recommend being consistent. All right, so I use either the RGB or the hexadecimal notation virtually all the time. I don't like to even use the built-in colors, even though I have been here using them here just because it's easier for you to take a look at and understand. All right, I'll come back with units in just a couple minutes.